Hello, I'm Nick Capone, and this is Cultural Catholicism, a show that explores the existence and significance of the Catholic faith within the culture. Today, I'm speaking with Trevor Alcorn of Tridentine Brewing, um, along with his father Jeff and brother Cameron. Uh, Trevor is the co founder and vice president of Tridentine Brewing, and he heads up their social media and their marketing. He lives in Illinois currently with his wife, Caitlin, and their 5 children. In other words, he's a husband and father. And finally, and most importantly, he's a devout Catholic. Uh, we have a great conversation um, on the origin story of the company, um, why they branded themselves as Catholic, and what fruit has come from that decision. He takes us through, because I'm not sure if anybody knows the full journey. I certainly didn't. Journey through the creation of one of their beers, from concept to delivery. We also talk about the intertwined history of beer and Catholicism, um, which is a lot of fun to learn, honestly. And then finally, the spiritual benefits uh, of beer, of alcohol, and how we can create a reverent relationship with alcohol. That's very important. So that's all coming up. I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. Trevor, thank you for coming on and talking to me. Um, I have a confession, and it's that I don't really like beer, but I have a counterbalance. My last name is Capone. Al Capone kind of fought for the cause
That's
during
right.
Prohibition, so I'm hoping that kind of balances out. And maybe even, if somehow he's in heaven, maybe he's praying for me right now to develop a palate for it. Um, and even I have to say too, I was a couple years ago, I wanted to dabble. I'm like, I'm going to take hold of this. I'm going to get into it. And Yingling they had come out with it. I'm ashamed to say this too, a Hershey, like, porter.
Yes, I
And,
remember that one.
yeah. And I thought, I love chocolate. This is my in. And it wasn't my in. I took I took a few sips and I was done. And it was in my fridge for the last few years, and I thought, I'll always get back to it, and I'll try again. And we threw it away the other day. Uh, and at the same time, in God's providence, you sent over this really great care package, and it had a few different drinks in it, much higher quality, I'd like to add.
Well, thank you.
um, and I tried the lager. Um, and I wanted to kind of work my way up the ladder. I thought that was a safe. I did ask my dad. I'm like, what's the best one to try to start? And he's like, try the lager, and I did. And my very undeveloped palate enjoyed it. I thought this is a beer I could drink. I live in Florida, and a nice cold one. I could do it. Um, so I want to thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Well, hopefully we can turn around your impression of beer, and yeah, I think that's a rough go of it with the Hershey's Porter from Yangling. I had one of those a couple of years ago, and it was okay, but definitely I think left something to be desired. Is a little watery for what you might think. You might have this idea of like some really chocolatey in mind. So hopefully we can change your impression of beer along the way, Nick.
Yeah, I think so. I um I have to also point out in your box that you sent, one thing you included was a third class relic, and it's of blessed, is it Karl of Austria?
Yes.
So what's the? I just have to ask right off the bat, what's the story behind that?
Yeah. And you can see some of his memorabilia up here behind my shoulder. Uh, yeah, Blessed Karl of Austria. He's the last emperor of Austria-Hungary. Really, the last Holy Roman Emperor, if you will. And he reigned about 100 years ago. So at the end of World War One, he was deposed, and he ended up dying actually very young, really in his early or mid 30s, in the early 1920s. But he led a very, very holy life. He was an exemplary leader, but not just an exemplary Catholic leader, but also an amazing husband and a father as well. So I really had a great devotion to him, as well as my wife, and to Karl's wife, which is Empress Zita, who is also a servant of God. So she's going through the canonization process right now. But I had started a devotion to him about 15 years ago when I was active in politics. And that was my kind of is like, oh, well, it's a good role model for maybe a political leader. But really grown even closer to him as I've kind of left the politics aside and focused more as a husband and father. He's really been a tremendous role model for me. So yeah, that's kind of part of the story. Is a really great, wide ranging, growing cultist, especially here in the United States, which is interesting. You might think that, oh, this is a very European thing, but I think his following is quite large in the States. Uh, but I'll share one other story about him really quickly. Is that John Paul II actually beatified him in 2004, and he's the first pope to beatify his own namesake. So Karol Wojtyła, John Paul II's name, his father served in the army under Blessed Karl, and his father loved Blessed Karl, and so he named his son Karol, which is Polish for Karl. So anyway,
Wow.
so yeah, really deep connection there, and yeah, hopefully he'll be canonized soon. So waiting for that and praying for that.
That's great. Sounds like he's uh, definitely on the path, and you pointed out too that he was strong in his faith in his family, and I'll go back to your package one more time. It was very intentional, and it felt um just the card that you sent, the relic, um the decals, the drinks, of course. It felt like a fit like a family owned Catholic business sent this, and which of course did. Um, and as I was searching, initially trying to find a Catholic brewery to have a conversation with, I didn't really find many. There's a lot of like Trappist breweries, obviously, and those are obviously Catholic and great. I did not find many family owned ones like yourself. I'm not sure if that was just me or if there really aren't that many. Um, but I have to first ask, is this a rare thing what your family's doing, being Catholic, not just a family owned brewery, but being a Catholic one?
Yeah, I would say so. Yes, there are Catholic families that own breweries, even in the United States, and we know of some of them. And then when we get later to talking about the beer, even a brewery that we work with, they're even Catholic and they own the brewery, and they even make some Catholic beers of their own. But in any case, it does exist, but it's not very common. And in fact, even what you had mentioned about the Trappists and even various monks making beer, that's actually been relatively rare in the last 200 years. But prior to that, it was huge. Like every single monastery had a brewery. But in the last 200 years, even the monks have, since Napoleon, really, there's only been a few breweries that are out of monasteries. But then even like Catholic families, yeah, it's relatively rare. But even more rare, I think, are Catholic families that are running a brewery that make Catholic themed beers. So there's probably quite a few Catholics that own breweries and run breweries, but very few that seem to, let's just say, market explicitly Catholic beer.
Now, is that worldwide or just in the States that you're talking about?
You know, in the States, I would say, in regards to like the Catholic family, Catholic run type of a thing, yeah. A bit harder for me to say worldwide, but certainly in the States, it's relatively rare, I would say.
Yeah, well, your Catholic branding is the big differentiator. Because I'm sure there are a lot of Catholic families who might run breweries or own them. But you guys are putting your faith like front and center and effectively and beautifully. So can you kind of take me through the story of Tridentine Brewing from all the way from the start, whenever that was, to where you're at now, and even maybe if you have any growth or any new drinks that are coming out, like all the way through your timeline.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. So our story, well, we really started as a home brewery. The commercial aspect of it started in October of 2024. So we're going on 6-8 months right now as of this recording. But we started as a family operation, and it goes back a few generations of home brewers. So you'll appreciate this with your last name being Capone, and that my great great grandmother in Chicago during Prohibition brewed beer in her bathtub at her home. So that's the first known brewer that we know in the family.
Amazing.
But then we have my grandmother and grandfather. They brewed beer, and they actually taught my father how to brew beer. And then my father and I have been brewing beer for the last 12 years. So when my father was moving, this is about 12 years ago, he had all his home brewing equipment in the back of the basement, and I was helping to move stuff. I was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Oh, it's the home brewing equipment that I used to brew with grandma and grandpa." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, why don't you show me, and let's do a few batches." And so it was something that was a little bit more casual, a couple times a year, maybe 3 or 4, and we were doing it for fun. But then my father, he was coming up on retirement in 2019, and so we thought, okay, let's bring this to the next level. Let's upscale from kind of like the starter batches that we were doing, that any like home brewer can do, to more advanced all grain brewing. So we decided to do that, and we thought, well, let's brand it for fun. Yeah. So we had started to name some of the beers, but up to that point, we really didn't have like a cohesive brand or anything like that. And again, this is all for fun. So we went through like 30 different names. We ended up landing on Tridentine Brewing. And part of that was because we wanted to show our love for the faith. Our family has a devotion to the traditional Latin Mass. And so Tridentine, meaning related to the Council of Trent, where in 1570, that form of the Mass was codified, at least. And so there's that, but also we wanted to show that we have like a link to tradition, and that we want to brew in a more traditional way, of more traditional recipes, not necessarily all these crazy off the wall recipes that you see all the time with some breweries. And so we came up with the name, and from there we just started branding the beers, mainly Catholic, but we wanted to make sure that we also incorporated family, and of course just our love for our country. So that's really the three categories that the beers fall into. Usually it's more the Catholic side and the country side, but sometimes there's a family element. So in any case, we were doing that for a while, just at home. And my brother, he is our graphic designer, so he would design labels for us. And my dad, he's the one who's mainly doing the brewing and the the design of the batches, and so he'd come up with all the recipes from scratch, and so things were just going well for a couple of years, just doing that. And I just started posting on social media in 2021 after we've been doing it for a couple of years. Say, yeah, hey, this is what we're doing. Just share with people, like, an interesting hobby that we have, just sharing our faith. And it kind of blew up from there, and the interest really grew. And we decided, okay, my dad did in 2023. He decided, let's try to take this to the next level. Let's see if we can't make it commercial. So from there, we decided, let's invest in this. Let's give it a go and see where it goes. And so we decided to, because we've been brewing out of our basement, and it is really nice home brewery. I will say that, very, very nice, but it's a little too small to actually brew for for what we need, because our batch sizes were about 140 bottles, which sounds like a lot if you're just drinking it yourself, which is true, but you want to distribute it, it's a little bit too small. So we sought out another brewery to partner with to brew the beer at, so that we can at least get it going and see what the interest is. And so we found a brewery in Madison that's willing to partner with us on that. Their name's Carbon 4. They have some of their own Catholic themed beers as well. So they really loved the idea, loved the message. And so, we basically took our recipes, worked with them to tweak it up to larger batch sizes, 14 barrel, 30 barrel batch sizes. And we started that in late fall. So fall of 2024. And we've been distributing in Wisconsin so far. So we want to continue to expand. Of course, I'm from Illinois, so we want to get into Illinois. We're not in Illinois yet, so we want to get into Illinois and expand our reach still even further than that. But that's where we're at right now, kind of getting around the state, and it's been well received so far. It's not just a fun social media thing at this point. It's kind of surreal that it's real, that I can actually have a can of the commercial beer in hand, and it's a real tangible thing. And so it's been a great journey so far. And so our Lord is definitely blessed it, and we'll see where he wants us to take it.
That's beautiful. What's a lineup of all the products you currently offer, for anyone wondering?
Yeah, sure. So we've got 4 commercially right now. So let me start from lightest to darkest. So we have our Quartermaster Jerry Blonde Ale. So right there in the can, you can see that's my paternal grandfather, Jerry. And
Oh, that's great.
he was a Navy veteran, and he never, when he was alive, he never liked our homebrewed beer because he liked light beer. He liked Busch Light. That's like what he drank all the time. And so when he passed, we were like, okay, let's try to make a beer that Grandpa would like. It's on the lightest end of the spectrum. So we're pretty confident that Grandpa Jerry would like the beer and that he'd drink it. This one, so that's a nice entry level for anyone. It's a nice summer beer. We even put on the side of the beer, grilling, mowing, and garage, because like those are the 3 places where he'd have a beer for the most part, and it goes well with any of those 3 occasions, or if you will. So that's the first one. The next one is the Cristeros, which you had mentioned previously, Nick, which is our Mexican lager. And it really is to honor the Cristeros, well, the group of Catholics in Mexico that fought against government persecution of the church, the faithful, in the early 20th century. And so there was a bit of a civil war in Mexico because there was such a harsh crackdown, persecution of priests, of the church, limiting of mass. And so they fought against the government. They fought the government to a draw, even though they were hamstrung in every possible way. Many of them were martyrs for the faith, some of which maybe some of the listeners know. For example, Blessed Miguel Pro, he was martyred during the course of the war, for example. And so we wanted to do something more traditional, something that the Cristeros may have had themselves. So we went with a more traditional Mexican lager. It's amber. It's darker. It's not something that you would, it's not like a Corona where you'd put a lime in it, for example. This is a bit maltier, has a bit more substance, and it's really in alignment with what the Austrian brewers of the middle of the 19th century, when they came over to Mexico with Emperor Maximilian and his government, they brought the Vienna lager style with them. And so it's an adaptation of the Vienna lager, and they just added more corn to it because that was what was native in Mexico. And so that style grew up from there. So it's a bit of a little bit darker, but it's a really, really nice, smooth beer that has some
It doesn't
body
sound
to
like
it.
that's the one I should have started with.
Yeah, I probably would have started with the Quartermaster Jerry, just because that's the lightest thing that you could start with. But really, Cristeros is not a bad one to start with because it's not like overpowering or anything like that.
Well, if I'm
So
going up the steps trying to advance my palate, I skipped a level, so I'm already on level 2.
you skipped yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great, Nick. If you said you enjoyed it and you skipped a level, then fantastic. Okay, then we've got our Second Amendment New England IPA, and as I mentioned previously, we like to keep on Catholic theme and like patriotic theme, and so this is really in support of our God-given like natural law right to self-defense. And we brewed, and all these brews, by the way, they're just adaptions of our home brewed recipe, things that we had brewed before previously. And so we had brewed this New England IPA, Second Amendment, at our home. This one is really, it's not your typical IPA. I think a lot of people have in their minds, like with an IPA, that it is something hipsters would have. It's very hoppy. It's tastes horrible. This IPA is very hazy. It's very, it has very fruity taste to it, very juicy. So I don't know if I'd say tropical, but definitely almost like an orange type of a taste to it. And it's really easygoing, not very hoppy tasting, even though it is an IPA. So don't let the name fool you. In other words, with the IPA, it is very easygoing to drink. And then lastly, what we've got out right now, at least commercially, is our Dies Irae Imperial Stout. Dies Irae in Latin means Day of Wrath. And we wanted to, you can see the skull on there.
It's a great
It
can
looks
design.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the graphic designer, Chris Lewis of Veritas Catholic, is phenomenal. I can't say enough about Chris and what he does. I mean, if anybody's listening, check out his artwork. He does a lot of Catholic artwork, and it's phenomenal. So yeah, it really makes the can. It makes kind of sells itself, just the artwork itself. And that was something that I wanted to make sure that when we had the beer out there, it was something that was very beautiful, because typically when you go down the beer aisle, a lot of the cans are blah, or they're like demonic or something.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, demonic. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like really apparent, like hits you right away. Like it's like, oh, this is kind of this can, which is funny. I mean, I say it's demonic. I mean, this is not demonic. This is about thinking of the four last things, our four last things of death, judgment, heaven, hell. So for this one, we just wanted to, for the Holy Souls of Purgatory and our own, like for contemplation on, what's our ultimate end in this life. And so this beer is good to think about that and to sip it lightly, because this is a 10% ABV, 10.1%, and it's very dark. It's the total polar opposite on the spectrum between Quartermaster Jerry and Dies Irae. It's about as dark as you can get. And but it's great for, again, just sipping, having a conversation, especially at night. I'm having Cristeros right now because I don't want to fall asleep. But especially if you're at night and you can fall asleep too, it's a good beer to have.
That's a good thing I didn't try that one before this interview. I slurred my
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
I also
You'd
like
be sleepy.
I also like how it's you just like thinking about death as you drink it is a great reminder to like not drink too much.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you don't need to. You'd have one of those, and then that's about it, right?
So this is just it was funny when I was talking to my wife earlier about this conversation we were going to have, and she paused and she goes, "How's beer made? Does anyone even know?" And I was like, I don't know. And she's not a stranger to beer, so in her defense, she's not ignorant. But can you kind of briefly describe like what goes from? I know that these were kind of recipes that your father had developed at home, but let's say you're making your fifth. What's the process from? How do you start it? Like, is it with the flavor and you develop that through you, and then also the can design? If you don't
mm,
mind, it'd be great
yeah,
to know what that process is.
yeah, sure. So maybe I could talk about the process, and then we can talk about beer itself. How does beer made? So for us, the process has always been it goes one of two ways. Either we have an idea of we want to make this style of beer, a particular style, or we have an idea of we want it this theme. We want it after this saint. We want it after whatever. And so that's typically where we start. And so if it's after a saint, then we're like, okay, or another theme, what matches up with that? Is there a style that maybe very easily matches up with it? So for example, with the Mexican lager, that one was easy. We wanted to do a beer for the Cristeros, and okay, there is such a thing as a Mexican lager, a style, so we developed that style. Uh, Another example was we wanted to do a beer in honor. We talked earlier about Blessed Emperor Karl of Austria, and so we want to do a beer for him. Well, his capital city when he's emperor was Vienna, and there's the Vienna lager style, so that made it relatively easy. So that's how we start out. But then from there, we have to develop the recipe. So my father, he's our brewmaster. He typically then does a whole bunch of research on the style, and then what are all the ingredients. And really, I might as well say it now for what goes into a beer. There's 4 ingredients for beer, and this has really been true since the actually I think it's the 16th century. There's a German beer purity law, which is the regulating the ingredients that can go in beer, and there's 4, which is water, barley, hops, and yeast. And those are supposed to be the 4. Now, I mean, there's other what we call like adjuncts, other things. You could have wheat in there, and some other types of grains, but that's really the 4 things. Now, people add in other flavors, other elements. Of course, that's pretty common now, but at its core, that's really what a beer is made out of. And then you're able to really regulate, the different style based on the strains of yeast or the types of barley, and maybe different types of roasts, because you can get all different types of barley, different types of roasts. And so you're able to, with those 4 ingredients, make almost any single style that you're looking to make. So anyway, for us, getting back to what we do. So my father will typically develop the recipe. We'll brew the batches at home, and test it out, and then from there, yeah, well, I mean, we're brewing it there at home. Now, when we want to make the jump to commercial, what we have to do is we have to translate our recipe, and it's what it's called is like scale the batch up. So you might think, oh, this is no big deal. You just take what you have on paper for a homebrew batch, and then you multiply it X amount, and then that's exactly what goes into the commercial batch. And that's not really true. I mean, you do have to make some tweaks along the way. And so we work with the commercial brewery that we're having the the beer brewed at, and we developed the commercial recipe with them. So we use our base batch, but then we scale it up. And so we do that. And then we also work with our graphic designer, who's Chris Lewis. And we work with him on the theme, everything that we'd like to see in the beer can. And Chris is phenomenal because he can take almost any idea and translate it into something just mind-blowing. Even like first draft, like he'll come back with like, oh, I just spent a day on this, or a couple days, and what do you think? It's a rough draft. And it's like the most amazing thing you've ever seen. Like, what do you mean rough draft? Like, looks like a masterpiece already to me. So he makes it really easy. And so we work with him, we get that done, and we schedule the beer batch, we get that going with the brewery. There's a brew day, it's canned, and voila, we have the beer. And then from there we're able to get it into stores. So then we have like a bit of an introductory period, of course, with different retailers, different restaurants that we're at, and introduce that new beer style to them, and get it on the shelf or on tap.
And so right now you're just in the state of Wisconsin selling them, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Okay. When do you think you're gonna there's no online, I don't know how this works, so is it,
Yeah.
there's no way right now to go outside of the state?
Well, okay, so a couple things. We are working on getting licenses for other states. So Illinois is the first one outside of Wisconsin, but we want to go beyond just those two states. However, we are self-distributing, so it's a little bit of a limiting factor because we are delivering the beer everywhere and making all the sales and everything else ourselves. So that's where it's a little bit limiting in that, being able to branch out to absolutely everywhere. However, that's in the works, and there's a lot of fun red tape to deal with between different state governments, the federal government. We've had a really fun time, especially with Illinois. Just sometimes some of these licenses can take, for example, I'll say this, I think with the federal license that we submitted for Illinois, you have to go through the feds first, then through Illinois, and we submitted it to the feds, and it's just a normal process. It doesn't go through a committee or anything. It just, here's this form, fill it out, then they rubber stamp it. Basically, it took 4 months for them to get to it, to rubber stamp it, and then we sent it to Illinois, and Illinois said, no, we don't like how you submitted this, send it back. So now it's back with the feds again. We'll be back to Illinois to hopefully get the license for Illinois. So there's a lot of red tape with beer and alcohol generally. And that's true on the shipping side as well. So with wine, I think 49 of 50 states allow for direct-to-consumer shipping of wine. However, for beer, it's only 11 of 50 states allow for beer to be shipped directly to consumers. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I think there's a different number as well for hard liquor. So there's like they're categorized totally differently. So the wine lobby was pretty on their game in the 90s and early 2000s, and they changed state laws for wine, but then beer is still classed differently. So for us, we want to do the shipping. There's a few states where it's easy to do the shipping to, especially like Ohio, Kentucky. There are a couple of easy ones that we could hit that we're looking at. But that's on our radar, but it's not like the top of our list, just because of that significant limiting factor with the direct-to-consumer laws that are on the books for beer.
Okay, we're gonna pray to Saint Expeditus for
That's right,
for your forms to go through.
Yes,
That's great. I have to say, well, first, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of, I think, Catholic brands across the board that bank hard on being a Catholic brand, and their quality is just like meh. And I actually don't buy a lot of Catholic branded items because of that. I don't feel like they actually care about the quality of it. It's more like they're trying to get like a religious sale. And yours is not that. Like yours is, it really is quality. I mean, the cans even themselves are impressive, and then again the flavor is it's delicious. I, I'm not just saying that. I mean, like I said, I was able to swallow it. So I swallowed it. I didn't make a face after.
It's a win. I'm gonna take the win, Nick,
It's a
because you said
win.
you don't really like beer, so that's
It's
a
a
great thing.
win. No, it's very good, and but it's quality. And I wanted to ask about your process, because like the care that you guys are putting into it and how intentional you are is, you know, we're I don't know. I think when you do something for the Lord, you do it as well as you can. And so I think that's just a testament that you guys are not just doing this for yourselves. You are doing this um for Christ. And I think it shows. I was curious if I think you have. I think you might have kind of alluded to it, but has there been any fruit in outwardly branding this as Catholic? Um, and that could be like anyone giving you a story or people just saying great work. Any fruit that you've noticed come from making that decision to actually be totally public with your traditional Catholic faith?
Yeah, I think we've definitely had really positive interactions. I'd say much more positive than negative, because I've also had people say, "Well, has there been negative reaction to it?" Uh, and yeah, so especially when we started out, we were doing home brewing, so and we were still doing a lot of Catholic themed beers, and it really sparked a lot of conversation or initiate conversations in a way that you would never be able to organically have a conversation with someone. So, for example, the Cristeros beer. People see the beer and like, oh wow, like that's cool, a cool cowboy. What's it about? What are the Cristeros? Okay, great. Now I can tell you a little bit about the Cristeros and what it means. And the same thing with like Dies Irae, or we've had one for Our Lady. We've had a Stella Maris Baltic Porter. So it gives that opportunity to share the faith in a way that you would normally not, to just people who are mostly not Catholic. And for me, it really kind of just it plants a seed for people. I'm not going to claim like, oh yeah, someone had the beer and boom, they had like a St. Paul moment and they converted on the spot, and it's like, no, that's not what's happening. But it's one of those things. For me, it's about getting that Catholicism, getting the faith out in the culture, and that we've really abandoned the field, so to speak, to the secular and even to the things that are completely hostile to the faith. So just getting that out there in the open so that people can see it and kind of experience a little bit of Catholic culture and make them think a little bit. And maybe that's not something that they're going to have a beer and then, go run to RCIA afterwards. It's probably not going to happen, but at least in most cases. But at least it triggers something for people, and they're very receptive. I've always found explaining the stories. The really you can see the wheels turning in people's minds, and so that's always for me been a fruitful experience. And that was one of the driving reasons that we went commercial with it, was because okay, this is a great witness to the faith, a good evangelization opportunity, even not just for us, but for other people that buy the product, right? Because it's going out, and so for other for patrons of the brand, they're going to bring it home. They're going to share it with their family and friends, and they can have that conversation with them. And so that was one of the main driving reasons that we even went commercial with it. So yeah, it's been a great opportunity so far, and Very, very minimal, I would say, negative feedback on the brand. I think the only really negative was, trying to get into, even with distributors early on. So I mentioned we're self-distributing, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One of which is a lot of distributors at first, we'd give them the story. They'd like the branding. They'd like the story even. But we had a few that were like, yeah, this is kind of a little bit out there. Like, we've not really seen anything quite like this before.
Sorry, there's no demons on the can.
Well,
this is you're playing. You got to be a little bit safer.
That's
Throw
right.
a devil on there.
We throw a devil, it'll be fine, right? That's the funny thing. Like, oh, I don't know what people are gonna think. This is a little bit faith based, and I don't know that we've seen this in the market before. And we're like, yeah, I know it's filling a gap in the market because there's very little
right.
out there right now. And so that was one of the reasons why we just decided, you know what, if we're gonna give this a go, we're gonna have to just distribute it ourselves. And so that's what we've been doing so far. And yeah, it's been well received. Great stories, and so yeah, I'm happy that we made the leap.
Well, I can fix your conversion issue. To get people, I'll let you in on this, and you don't have to give me any percent for this. If you want people, just throw some holy water in every batch. Problem solved.
Yeah, well, and you know what? That was something that we did. Well, not the holy water part, but the blessing of the beer. So you can actually have
great.
a priest bless the beer. So there is a formal beer blessing prayer that the church has, and so we have had, at least with our homebrewed batches, we've had a priest come out, bless the home brewery, bless batches of beer before, when we would give them out to people, family and friends. And so yeah, so definitely I think that can't hurt.
I think it's great too that the art on the cans that you said that there's a hope that because I think as you do expand and as you do get into more locations, and I think this market it does reach into all aspects of society. I mean, everybody buys beer, and that is true, that your art is objectively beautiful, and that someone might buy it, maybe because of how it looks, or maybe because it's the type that they want, or maybe someone said that one's good. I just think it's a great way to, like Bishop Barron says, that beauty is the first transcendental that invites people in most readily and easily, that lifts us up to the true and the good. And so that's what your cans are doing. And I'm sure even if one person, is brought to the faith, it's all worth it.
Absolutely.
That's great. I have a quote, and I think if you've heard it once, you've heard it 100 times. It's from G.K. Chesterton. I'm going to read it, make sure I don't get any part of it wrong. In Catholicism, the pint, the pipe, and the cross can all fit together. And this is a beauty of our faith, that's a reality, and that we know it's a reality. And I think history proves it. History proves that they do all intertwine, and that the two formers do aid us in carrying the latter, like in carrying that cross, things that are good for our minds, our bodies, our souls. It's good for the journey. So speaking of history, if you're able to kind of share the history and the relationship of beer and Catholicism, and kind of where they overlap, how they help each other, whatever you know of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I'll say before I get started, for anyone who wants to know about the history of beer and how it intertwines with Catholicism, I can't recommend this book enough. I don't get any commissions from the book. I'm just sharing it because I thought it's a great book. It's called The Beer Option. It's by Dr. Jared Stout, Brewing a Catholic Culture,
Nice
Yesterday
last name.
and Today. It's phenomenal last
That's
name for such a book, isn't
why
it?
he wrote the book.
Yeah.
It was his destiny.
He had to with a name like that. And so anyway, I'll steal a lot of the history out of Dr. Stout's book. But okay, so real quick, beer's been around for thousands of years. I think that they've traced beer back to 5,000 BC, even further back than that. And even for example, the Egyptians made beer. So when the Egyptians made beer, it was actually almost like a milkshake like substance.
Oh,
It's not like they drink it with a straw. So
really?
it's not exactly, yeah, they would basically let it like ferment, like kind of out in the open, like in jugs and whatnot. And so yeah, it would be kind of like whatever they threw in there, different grains and whatnot. But as time progressed, beer progressed, and the taste and how it was made. But even in the ancient world, there's even some biblical proof that it was used in the Old Testament, specifically even in the temple in Jerusalem, that they would use it and offer it to God. So it's called strong drink in the Old Testament, but it's
A
widely
literal name.
believed. Right, yeah, but it's widely believed, like there wasn't like hard liquor back then. So I mean, it's differentiated from wine, so it's believed that that's beer is what's being referred to. And so that was offered in the temple beer. So there you go. As far back as the Old Testament. But then when we come to kind of the New Testament and afterwards, so for the church, beer has been certainly instrumental in life of the church, at least different orders, monastic orders, for 1500 years. So the furthest back documented proof goes to I believe the 7th century, that we have proof that monks were making beer at monasteries. So they would either make beer or wine, depending on where they were at. Usually in the south of Europe, around the Mediterranean, it was mainly wine, but then to the north, it was mostly beer. And so what you typically think of as beer today is as a result of what the monks did and how they refined the process. So you can thank the monks for refining the process of beer brewing, and creating more or less what we have today over the centuries. And so, yeah, the monks, they refined the process. They created many different styles of beer, and as throughout the medieval period, I mean, it grew and grew and grew, the number of monasteries that even had breweries. I think at one time there was, I believe it was over 1,000 monasteries in Europe that had a brewery attached to it. And that was up until the French Revolution and Napoleon. So things dramatically changed after that. There was, I think, Napoleon was mostly the one who was responsible for it, but Napoleon shut down most of the monasteries and kind of devastated, not just the monasteries and the faith, of course, but the breweries. So I think after Napoleon, it went from several hundred breweries in Europe to, I think, like 35. And those are
Whoa.
most of the ones that you would think of now for like Trappist monastery, Trappist beers and whatnot. So they reestablished after Napoleon like 35 or so breweries. And so that's been the case up until the present day. There's not nearly as much of a foothold as there was a couple hundred years ago, that the church had in the brewing space. But certainly the history that the church has is very rich when it comes to beer and the contributions that it's made to it.
So, with that last quote from Chesterton, there are people who, of course, disagree with that, and like vocally, I've seen online even. And obviously, there are even denominations of Christians who don't believe in partaking in anything, and they're purists. They think even in that quote, if we say that alcohol and tobacco are not worth it because they do pose a risk. They pose a physical and a spiritual risk. And obviously, I think as Catholics, we know that these things need to be in moderation. In the faith gives us a good um, gives us good guidelines on how to do that. So I thought we could kind of offer um, a response to that, and I think if history wasn't enough to say, look, Christ's church has had this constant relationship with it. Um, there is something good about it. Okay, so now what's good about it? So can we focus first on the physical health? Um, that could be like reduction of stress or even anything else. I know there's so many articles that are always coming out, and they're always contradicting themselves. Like I see it about coffee and everything. It's like this is gonna kill you, and the next one's like this help you live 10 years longer. So anything that it's a health benefit, or at least that it's not inherently a health risk.
Yeah, well, I won't say anything about health benefit in case FDA comes after me or whatever, because like you said, I mean, there's studies saying this and that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think beer, and I know there's differences with wine, and sometimes you'll see stuff with wine and heart health and other things. Um, but with beer, I would say, yeah, in moderation. It's really it's almost like a liquid bread in a way. So certainly it can be a good
They
source
used to
of
call it that, right? Didn't back sometime in the past they would, when they were fasting, and they would drink beer with their meal. I don't know if it was the monks or if it was just Catholics.
yeah. Well, so let me tell you that real quick, since we're on the history. So there's the Franciscan monks in Bavaria. They had like it was like a doppelbock is what they brewed for Lent, and they pretty much had that just for Lent. Like they just had beer, and as a
Was this in the
replacement for
past,
any
or
any other
is this
food
present still?
in the
Okay.
past. In the past, so I think maybe the 15th century or something like that,
Okay.
and uh, the Pope got wind of it at the time, and so the Pope said, you know, send me a barrel. I want to taste it. And actually, the barrel went bad as it was going over the Alps on the journey. And by the time we got to the Pope, he had it and it was horrible. And he was like, have as much as you want all Lent. Like, this is a penance to have. Please have whatever you want. So, like, so that monk, those Franciscans, like, and I don't know how long it went on, but they would just have the Doppelbock for Lent. So it is like a liquid bread. I know a friend who does long distance running, and he has beer afterwards, and he's like, oh, it's great, for caloric intake, and so yeah, from that standpoint, it can be good, again in moderation, but also I think just from like the alcohol is a good social lubricant, I would say. And so from that standpoint, just on the social side of things, being able to have a glass of wine or a glass of beer with family, with friends, it really helps to help loosen things up a little bit and facilitate some really great conversations. So I think from a social side of things, in moderation, it can be very helpful.
I have to say one more historical thing. I remember hearing this. This might have been, my wife might have told me this too, that um, at some point in the past, somewhere in the world, I don't know the details, but they drink beer um, more than water because the beer was, they knew that it was safe to drink. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And that would be the case, certainly in Europe, in medieval period. So if the town or the community had the monastery and the monks brewed the beer, yeah, it would be safer. So children would, you know, small children even would drink beer. And it's a much lower percentage. Might be like 2 or 3% or whatever. But basically, when it goes through that process, I mean, the beer is, I mean, it's fine to drink in many cases, was a lot healthier, a lot healthier for people than the water, which could be contaminated. So yeah, that was quite common back then, and I think in Europe, for those who go, you do see that there's a different relationship. And probably stemming over the years, they didn't have the Puritan influence that we have here, where it's very
It's a
common
good
to
point.
see even like teenagers or whatever having wine with a meal or a beer or something like that, and it's not out of the ordinary. And they're not going out and getting drunk like most, like when you think of like Americans, you think, oh, high schoolers, college students going out and going crazy. But I think that relationship with alcohol in that culture is a lot healthier, in that it's introduced younger. I know it's like an anathema thing to say in America, but under the direction of parents, like introduced in moderation early, and it doesn't become this thing, kind of this taboo thing, which I think it is here, right? And people think, oh, I gotta have access to it, I can go crazy. And if it's something that you've had as a teenager before, and just kind of a normal part of society, healthy society, it's not a taboo thing. And so people don't feel the need, regularly, when they're of that age, especially, to go crazy with things. So anyway, sorry, Nick, I got off on a tangent there.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a huge part of it is in Europe that it's, I've spoken to I have a friend who's from overseas, and she's like, it, yeah, alcohol is just not a big deal. We don't
Yeah.
go crazy. It's not this like hidden treasure that you find when you open your friend's father's like liquor box and you're like looking in it. It's like, it's not even that I think they do have a more reverence for it than we do, but it's also just, I think, not that, you know, they just know how to enjoy it.
Yeah,
Um, and they didn't have the influences that we had in America. That's a big point.
exactly.
And ironically, that influence kind of has worked against the culture, because now it is the opposite of pure. Its consumption is incredibly abused. So, interesting. Um, I also thought, okay, you can't say health benefits, so I'll say the one that you alluded to, or didn't allude to. Wink. But it's lower stress. Like stress is the killer. Stress leads to cancer and all kinds of things. And if you can do it in moderation, and you do it in fellowship, or you do it in leisure, that's huge. That's huge. And there's a reason why that quote is so. Everybody loves that quote from Chesterton, because like tobacco and alcohol are demonized. Um, I think they or perverted by the world, and I think it's because that they can be incredible aids in our in leisure. I actually just think you could even just say that.
Exactly.
So now, can we focus on the spiritual? Kind of diving into that, actually, is the spiritual side, spiritual benefits, um, even uh, practicing temperance.
Hmm.
I mean, you're having to grow in the virtues to enjoy these things. Um, do you have any thoughts on that, or any tips for those listening on how they might be able to, um, yeah, incorporate a nice drink into their faith life?
Hmm. Yeah. So, a couple thoughts on it, Nick. You'd mentioned kind of earlier us, the quality side of things, of at least our beer, and wanting to make a quality product. I mean, and it's for us, we keep it in our name, or in our motto, which is brewing beer for the greater glory of God. Like, we want to keep that on the top of mind. And, in doing that, when you have a quality beer, it doesn't have to be our beer, but if you buy a quality beer, quality liquor, whatever, I think you're much more apt to enjoy one, rather than, hey, I need to have a 6-pack. Like if it's, something that's quality that you can enjoy, that's one thing.
It's a great point.
And so, yeah, so or even like for, this goes for hard liquor too. Like if you want to stay have some temperance and go buy a really expensive bottle of scotch, and you are not going to be slamming that. You will be
True.
taking it easy because that was not cheap. So, that's one thing. But also I would say, trying to have the beer in a way, or whatever alcohol it is, you know, typically in some type of a social setting, with a meal, with people. And I think that also helps to limit it, because which might sound counterintuitive. It depends who it's with, and, if it's a party or something, but, typically then, you're not doing it like having it just alone. And again, it's not for anyone who's single or something, like you can't have a beer or something. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, so it doesn't just become like this crutch thing, or, oh, hey, I'm really stressed, I'm just gonna go grab a whole bunch of beer or alcohol. You make this just something that has a tie to something social, because that's really what beer especially is. It's really a social type of drink. So tying it to something like that, I think helps to limit it. And
That's
so,
prudence,
yeah,
right? Like, that's doing it prudently.
exactly, being able to exercise that prudence. And I also think, speaking of prudence, it's also good to, and I would certainly encourage anyone, because I think everyone has in their family someone in their past who's struggled with alcoholism. And maybe people that are listening, maybe they struggle. And if you struggle at all, I would say, just, step away. It's okay. Just because like the church says you can have something, or you can, and it's fine in moderation, but okay, if that just becomes a struggle, it's okay to just walk away from it. Like, this is not like a necessary thing. So, I would definitely, and I've told this to people before when they've asked, like, well, what do you think about drinking too much, or do you encourage that vice? It's like, no. I mean, I would say, don't have our beer, don't have any alcohol. It's okay to walk away from it. So yeah, definitely that's something to keep in mind. It's also good. Sorry, Nick. It's all I'm rolling on here. It's also good to have some breaks as well. So, for example, Lent's a great time. We just talked about monks drinking only beer during Lent, but it's also good to do the opposite, which is maybe not having alcohol at certain times. Maybe during Advent, abstaining from alcohol. Maybe during Lent, abstaining from alcohol, and really being able to build up that tolerance, and really that virtue as well, to be able to say no and to keep it in its proper place.
Yeah, you touched on it, and I think, as we wrap up, this is something I'd like to sort of dig into a little bit more, because I think that alcoholism is it is rampant. But I think that offering any type of guidance that we can to anyone listening, but I kind of might focus on young men and women who, maybe have started their relationship with alcohol in a disordered way. And, I think if one is experiencing a serious addiction, that they need to seek proper help. I have a family member who was he's too young to be a severe alcoholic, and his body was actually like breaking down. So thanks be to God, he went to the hospital, and he went into rehab, and he's in AA, and he's on a good path. Like it works. It really works because if it worked for him, it could work for anybody. And so, encouraging serious addiction to seek help aside, if there are those who say like I might be with this group of friends and this is what we do. We're always drinking. You know how maybe they're being called higher right now just by hearing this. What's a practical set of steps that you might personally recommend to say, here's maybe how best to step back, look at beer, for example, with a renewed view, and then how do they step back into it in a more reverent relationship with it, and so it can be an actual aid and not a, you know, um, a tool of the devil, basically.
Yeah. Well, I would say maybe if this is something that someone's struggled with, maybe again, maybe they're not alcoholics, but they've struggled maybe with, sin of drunkenness or something to that effect. I mean, I would say if, for example, if you find yourself, you probably want to look at when is it happening, and kind of like just start to get to the root of the problem. Is there like certain triggers for you? So basically, avoid the near occasion of sin, I would say. So if you find that, yeah, I'm going out with this group of friends, and every single time I go out with this group of friends, or almost every single time, I end up, intoxicated, or I have way too many, um, then I would say, first of all, you might want to reevaluate that relationship, or at least maybe that setting that you're going out with those people. So maybe it might be prudent to stay away from that setting, or maybe those friends. Maybe those friends are the wrong people to have in your life, potentially. So those are a couple of things to evaluate. Certainly, if it's something that you find yourself drinking too much, like at home, and it's not tied to an event, then it may be worth just purging everything out of your house, right? I mean, I would say the same thing if someone was struggling with maybe overeating. Like, hey, if you have a whole freezer full of ice cream, you might want to get rid of the freezer full of ice cream if you're serious about losing weight or getting healthy, right? Because as soon as you have it in your life, it might trigger you. Now, for someone who's not, and let's just say maybe an alcoholic, or is just getting over a few of those bouts of maybe sinful behavior, you might, after a certain amount of time, you might be able to reincorporate, alcohol in your life in more of a healthy way. And so in that case, I would say certainly some of the things that I had said before, which is put alcohol in its proper place and context, which is social, not partying social necessarily. I mean, you can have it at parties, don't get me wrong. I mean, Jesus' first miracle was at a party with, creating alcohol. But
Good point.
so I don't want to make it sound like it's a bad thing. But, again, putting in its proper context within like a meal, or maybe, a conversation with friends, something like that. And maybe to ease in with something that's, again, something that's quality. Because if you're going out and you're getting the, a 36 pack of the, cheapest beer possible, just so you could drink a 6 pack a night or something like that, one might want to break that dynamic and choose something a little bit that's a little more quality, a little, something that would fill you up. Just have one. And you're like, wow, that was great. I enjoyed that. I don't feel like I need to, have all this, to fill, this beer to fill some void in my life. And that's the other thing is, there may be other things going on. I think for some people where it's covering up, something else that's going on in your life. So that's the other thing. It's not just about necessarily like, oh, getting rid of the beer, the near occasion sin. That's great. You should do those things, but it may also just be covering up, for some other sin, some other stressor in your life, in which case those
Maybe
other
it's
things probably need to be
idleness.
addressed. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just in idleness, they're just finding something to do.
Devil's workshop.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Enemy of the soul. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, it seems like the takeaway is, and this does kind of go for everybody with anything that they might, not have a great relationship with, but it's the pendulum swinging. I like that. Yeah. So take a break from it. Let the pendulum swing the total opposite way. It's a lot easier to come back to the middle then and have that balanced relationship with it.
Yes, exactly.
For anybody who wants to, learn more about Tridentine Brewing, to support you in any way, to um, keep an eye out for updates on when it may come to their state, where can people go to learn any of that?
Yeah, Nick. Well, few different things. First of all, I'd point people to our website, which is tridentinebrewing.com. So there you can learn a bit more about us. You can also check out the beer finder. I know we're just in Wisconsin, but even if you're around Wisconsin, if any listeners are, we list all the locations where the beer is available. Also, we're on social media. So on Twitter, at Tridentine Brew, Instagram, Tridentine Brewing. So we regularly post updates on what's going on with the beer. So if you're interested in learning where it's going to be, how the expansion's going, new beers that are coming along, feel free to follow us there. And then for those that are out of state or who maybe love the artwork or want another way to support us because maybe they can't buy the beer, we have a merch store as well. So TridentineBrewing.store. So you can check that out and buy some merch, support us that way.
Is I haven't had a chance to look yet. Does it use any of the artwork from the cans or anything like that?
Yeah. Yep. It does use the artwork from the cans. So we have some of the artwork, and like we call them tin tacker signs, but they're like metal signs that we've got, for example, magnets, other things, decals. So we have some of our old homebrew uh, things as well, label artwork, and then of course our commercial artwork as well.
So anybody who wants to go, potentially buy that, wear it, then they're helping the cause of spreading the beauty of your brand
right.
to help convert souls.
That's right.
And for anyone who doesn't live, for people in Wisconsin are like, yeah, there's something to be proud of to be in this, like there's something happening in this state. I can say that because I'm originally from Ohio, where there's like nothing. Hey, when you have something in your state, like yeah, let's go. But for anyone out of state, what they can do is offer a prayer for the papers to go through the government.
That's right. Prayers. And I should have added that too, Nick, is that's really the most important thing. I mean, whatever about the merch, like buy, don't buy, whatever, but really prayers. So we really appreciate everyone's, prayers, because that's the only reason that we're here, how we got here. So, Lord willing, that's how we'll continue. I mean, or if he doesn't want us to go anymore, then they'll just be what it is. But yeah, prayers are appreciated from everyone so that we can carry this forward.
Well, I can end with a quote from one of the saints of patron saints of, I think it's of beer, Saint Arnulf of Metz.
Yes.
Who says, "From man's sweat," I'm reading the quote, "from man's sweat and God's love, beer came into the world." And I think that your family's story and journey, and obviously God's goodness and grace, it proves that quote. And so it's been great talking to you, getting to hear the story. It's a beautiful story of your family's growth into this, and already the good that it's doing, and the impact you've made online is not obviously a coincidence. And so I thank you again for coming on and talking, and for sharing your faith, sharing your testimony. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Had a phenomenal time, Nick. Thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it, as well as liking it and subscribing if you'd like to hear more conversations like this. And then also supporting the show so that it can continue to be made. Thank you so much. God bless.